gonna get started. I know we still have people filtering in. Drop in the chat if you are a current STR owner or if you are a potential hopeful, hoping to own one soon STR owner, and where you're from. And we're going to introduce our guest today and who I am. My name is Ashleigh Gillespie. I am the Director of Sales for Savvy STR Agents. So I work out of Denver, Colorado, helping make sure all of our agents are helping our wonderful clients find profitable properties across the country. We service all over. So if you are looking for an STR, we can do a market match call. We'd be happy to help you discover what area would be best for you. So reach out. We'll put some contact information and you can set up a call with us. No obligation and no cost. We've got Chad, hopeful STR owner out of Philly. Whoop, whoop. Get a Philly cheesesteak
Yeah,
today because those are good.
we're getting
And
Chad
today
some.
we've got yeah, today we've got a Justin Ford. He works with Breezeway as the Director of Safety and Certification for STRs around and STR owners. He is kind of really well known in this space, really well respected for what he does and what he brings to the table. A lot of you have probably seen him in the Facebook groups or on podcasts. You've heard him before. And I was talking with him for a couple of minutes before we started presenting today. He was talking about how many people reach out and say, I know that I should be listening and doing, and I'm not yet. So today, hopefully, is a good opportunity to get you on the right path of protecting yourself and your investments. So Justin is going to be doing the majority of our presenting today. Use the chat and the Q&A to drop questions. We'll probably be answering them at the end. But as you think of them, type them in and we'll address them, make sure we get all of your questions answered. So, Justin, my friend, please feel free to take it away.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. This is great. And one of the things that's going to happen today that's amazing is before this webinar is done, we're going to save somebody's life or prevent an injury. As you said, I do a lot of podcasts and presentations, but for some reason, more so than ever, these rare opportunities where I get to do a webinar like this, I'll get a text message or a email from somebody a week or two from now that will say, "Hey, I was listening to what you said, and I did this, and oh my gosh, the next day, thank goodness we had done that." So that's why I'm excited to be here today, first and foremost. And that's pretty powerful. And I know some of you going, yeah, whatever, but trust me, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna blast in. I thought we'd do something really unique, something I haven't done before today, and I'm doing it special for you. There's a lot I can talk about safety for days, but I'm gonna make it interesting. I thought what we would do is we would take a look at last year. What happened last year? So let me pull up a little slide deck. There's you and me hanging out, telling people this is where we need to be today. But I've been in the industry. I always like to joke. I've been in the industry since Brian Chesky was in diapers. And he's a younger guy. He started Airbnb, only in, the past 10, 15 years. So Airbnb is not as new as people think. And people always are like, well, this is new. It's like, no, it's not. George Washington, when he was conquering the British, he would stay in people's homes as he traveled along. And while he wasn't on vacation, they were short-term rentals. They were furnished properties. Short-term rentals have been around for over 800 years that we know of, the earliest records going back into Italy and places like that. So this is not a new industry. It's just new how we distribute it. But this was my rental in 1997. So I'm coming up on 30 years in the industry. I was a bachelor. I bought that thing and it was on a lake up here in Maine. And I said, I bet you I can make some money renting that out. It was 500 bucks a week. Right now, it's still for rent under a new owner. It's like 4,000 a week. So it's like, wow, that's what a big
Wow.
change since then. Um, but yeah, had a boat, was on the water, and said, you know what, I like this. And my neighbor came to me one day and said, "Hey, Justin, you're doing great with that. You think you could help me with mine?" And I said, "Sure, let's do it." And back then, you didn't have Airbnb, Verbo, Booking.com. You put an ad in the back of the New York Times. So that was pretty crazy. People would mail you a check that you didn't even know, and they'd say, whatever week's available, we'll take it. So crazy stuff. But at that time, I was a firefighter. I was a firefighter for 15 years. I had a background in the U.S. Coast Guard. And then I turned that one home into what became the largest vacation rental company in the entire northeastern U.S. That's Pennsylvania, New York, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Maine, Vermont. We were number one, and I sold that company in 2017 to put a focus strictly on what I do now with safety. And earned a lot of awards for what I've done. I just came back from London a couple weeks ago, bottom left there, where I won the largest award in our industry for pioneering safety from the short-term rentals. Coolest thing is I'm the tallest guy to ever get a Shorty Award. But regularly named, a top consultant and lots of awards for what I've done. So the thing that I'm most proud about, though, it's not up here. We know of over 100 lives that my work has saved and thousands of injuries. Almost every time a life is saved, someone reports back to me on that, and that's what keeps me going. It's pretty epic. I've lost some tears over some of the emotional stories of some of the close calls. But you can follow me too. I'm always on short-term rental safety. I post all kinds of fun little videos. I do my safety tip Tuesdays. So please continue to follow and keep in touch. Even bring my daughter on once in a while to help me out with smoke alarm videos. So she's thrilled by that. So yeah, let's have some fun and talk a little bit about last year. Just to kind of put in a nutshell and a perspective of what kind of goes on in our industry. And just so you know, if I was just to talk about every incident that happened last year, by my count, it would take me 27 hours. So we don't have that kind of time today. So Ashleigh, hang on. I'm just going to talk about some of the big ones. I traveled and did work in 14 countries last year, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Mexico. Any of you going down to Mexico? I help write the regs down there. Fiji, Croatia. So one of the cool things is I'm able to really adapt and understand, and I've made all my focus at the highest possible levels so that it works on a global level. But primarily, I'm doing work in the U.S., but getting around quite a bit. And one of the things that I do is I get out and train a lot of companies. I also go in and train Airbnb community groups. That's something that's really fun for me. For example, an Airbnb community group in Denver, Ashleigh, near you, will say, "Hey, can
That's
you come
right.
out and talk to us?" So do a lot of different training. I train fire marshals. I just got back from training Montana State Code Enforcement Association. And usually when I'm walking through an airport, people don't like recognize me as like some movie star. That's not who I am. But I am always proud that fire officials, I think the Vail fire chief stopped me last time I was in Denver. He's like, "Hey, I know you." And it's because I do a lot of work with Sparky the fire dog. So I was pretty excited going into 2024. The very first news story of the year was that 10 people escaped a property. And this was somebody who has gone through my safety training. And I'll tell you about that at the end. But they had done my safety training, got certified, did their smoke alarms. We had a save. And I'm like, 2024 is going to be awesome. The smoke alarms alerted the guests and they got out of this property in Santa Rosa, California. So off to a good start. Actually, I wish I could say it
That's
kept going
amazing.
that way. It didn't. It wasn't too long after that, I got a phone call from another customer who said, "Oh my gosh, Justin, we've done everything we thought we were supposed to do, and then this happened." As you know, last winter there was some unusual levels of snow. People weren't necessarily prepared for all the snow they got up there in the Colorado Rockies. And you have guests that are coming in, and a couple boys were playing near the garage, and the entire roof slid down on them
Mm.
and nearly killed them. One of them had to be medevaced down. And that operator came to me and said, "How are we supposed to prevent that?" Signs. Now, do you have signs in your rental properties?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't think about what the importance of signs are. I recommended that they put this, and they did, and there are a lot of operators now that have been putting up a sign like this. If you're in a market where you can have a lot of snow, but you've got to think about that. If you're in an area where, you're in coastal Florida and an alligator could come up, you got to have a sign. Disney World learned that
Yeah.
lesson the hard way. Signs should be really important though. And so many operators do this. They put this welcome book and they put the safety information in there. No one is going to go in that book and move the sugar and the gifts and all the stuff out of the way to go, I need to read the safety information and know what the hazards are. That's not going to happen. And there was a case that really highlighted that last year. I'm not going to go deep into it, but basically, a woman had something happen to her from a medical condition getting into a hot tub, and it resulted in her suing and suing the operator. Now, this is how thrifty, this covers everything right here. This is how thrifty lawyers are right now. They had this host on the stand, and they said, "Wait a minute. You tell your guests to take off your shoes. You have signs saying keep your noise down, and you tell them where to park." But you couldn't put a sign up at your hot tub and warn them of, they got to consult the doctor. And they lost this case. And it's something that we need to pay attention to right now. Lawyers are very thrifty. Um, I've gone into markets now where there are billboards. Las Vegas has one, injured in your Airbnb, call so and so. I just drove across Florida. I feel like every mile there's a billboard saying, call this injury attorney. And if you Google search, vacation rental accident, short-term rental accident, Airbnb accident. There are tons of lawyers now want to do this. They're even this is scary, they're in the Facebook groups and they are using AI now to collect data. When
Oh,
you're going
yes.
in, yeah, when you're going into a Facebook group and you're saying, hey, does anybody have recommendations on the best mattress? And you're not sharing photos that show that you've put safety first, they use that against you later. They're stacking the data. You got to be careful. I watch them and I see them. So big lesson here from all of this. Then this happened, and this kept happening and happening and happening and happening. I'm not sure if you're aware, Ashley, but the most number one cause for death in our industry are pool drownings. It's not fires. And we have an epidemic in our industry globally. Just had one in Australia the other day. We've had them in Spain, all over the globe. Pools are dangerous. They're a dangerous place for kids. Scottsdale and the Phoenix market around Arizona actually surpassed Florida for the first time ever. Florida has some good regulations against them. And I see operators all the time. You've got pools in Denver, right?
Yeah, we do have some, not a lot of backyard pools, but community pools are very popular.
Yeah, and you don't, and there aren't any regulations because there are only a few. And we're starting to see that happen in markets where there aren't a lot of swimming pools, and there's no regulations, and people just think, oh, yeah,
Yes.
no, I got this covered. One of the coolest things you can do, though, this is the cheapest thing you can do to prevent pool drownings. And if you don't, I designed this one, I did it on Canva. You can do it and put your logo in it. It doesn't, I mean, this thing costs like $2. I went on to Zazzle and printed it off on a cool card. You get a lanyard. The intention is it's called the Water Watcher program. It was created by a family down in Florida. Their 4-year-old son drowned in front of 16 people in a swimming pool because nobody knew who was
Yep.
watching him. They all just assumed someone was. And just by leaving this on the counter at your vacation rental, even if they don't use it, you've at least put it in their mind for a half a second of what's this? What? Yeah, we're not going to use that. What? Why are we doing that? Oh, pool drownings. Yeah. Hey, we got to make sure we keep a closer eye on the kids. That's right. I forgot about that. So anything we can do to bring awareness to it without, and people don't like to put it in other people's face because they don't want to, put this negative spin on your vacation. But I mean, you fly, right? What happens at the beginning of every flight? We get a safety briefing.
Here's the
Um,
safety brief. Yeah. It's and
we got to
it's
do
to your
that.
well, to your point though, I mean, these are people on vacation that maybe are not familiar with things like a backyard pool and they aren't sure that they're not aware of water safety. And so you are helping not only helping protect yourself, but you're helping protect them.
Exactly. And I'm sure you've ever had vacation brain before?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I had it recently. I walked into a gas station that also had a cafe area. And before you knew it, I'm like looking at this hat. I'm like, that's a really cool hat. I'm gonna see how much this costs. And I turn around, the chef's looking at me. He's like, can I help you? And I'm like, what? He goes, you're in the kitchen. I'm like, holy smokes. And he looked at me and he goes, man, you've got vacation brain. And I'm like, oh my God, I have it. I had no idea. He's like, you walked right into the kitchen because I was just in a fog. just
Yeah.
chill, chilling out. We got to remember that about our guests. Speaking of vacation brain, holy smokes. What do you think happened here, Ashley?
I mean, I would guess fire, but
It close. We had an explosion. This was a case, and this highlights this was someone who tried to do something right. And I'm going to show you a slide in a minute about how you should set up your gas grill. We had 9,000 safety incidents around gas grills in our industry last year. 9,000. I see so many crazy things. I see cleaners who are lining aluminum foil on the bottom of the gas grill to make it look clean. But the manufacturers say don't do that because you're creating a lake of grease and then it catches on fire and burns people,
mm,
crazy stuff. But this was a case where someone tried to do everything right. And they had instructions written out that said, when you arrive, the gas will be off. Here's how you turn it on. The problem was is nobody checked to make sure that the gas was off. And in fact, the gas was left on. But the person who was going to use the grill had had a couple beers. They were two Coronas in. Alcohol can be a real problem that we don't always factor in. And so instead of turning the gas on, they turned the valve and it turned the gas off. Then they opened the burners and tried to light it, but it didn't work. So then they said, oh, we better turn the gas back off, but they were actually turning it on, left the burners open. He went into the bathroom to go get rid of those Coronas, and a spark happened and it blew up. And that's the grill
wow.
on the floor. Imagine the explosion, blew the windows. In fact, it blew the ceiling off
Thank goodness
inside.
he walked away from that room for that moment.
Exactly. I mean, having that urge to go into the bathroom saved his life. But this is what we have to do. If we're going to leave instructions out for people, we've got to be clear, but we also have to set up and make sure that happens. There's a lot of steps. There's so many steps. People love getting into this industry, and I love this industry. My family owns a vacation rental. I'd like to get some more, so I'm not here to get people out of doing this. I'm just saying there's steps and there's processes and things that we have to have in place because the general public's coming in here. And this is what I like to do. That QR code actually works if anybody wants to scan it. What that is I took my cell phone, I propped it up, I just propped it on a chair, and I shot a video. I said, "Hey, this is Justin. I'm here at, my Airbnb. This is how my grill works." And I did a 2-minute video that showed how to do it. I uploaded it to Vimeo. I have a free account on Vimeo. Now it's linked, and any guest who walks up can watch that video, not just read the instructions, because they're not going to do that. And they're not going to go in your welcome book and say, how do I use a grill? And the instructions that come with the grill don't have much on it on that sticker. This is actually showing someone how you want it, where you want it, what you want to do. So I recommend this
Yeah.
for a lot of things. I don't know if you've ever seen, have you been seeing people are starting to use the QR codes?
I have seen people trying to use them. I don't know that I've seen them executed as well as this example because this covers you safety wise, but also how many people have to deal with the 10 o'clock calls. Hey, the grill won't turn on. And you're
Yes.
trying to walk them through something real simple. This saves you from that as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just at a vacation rental in Maryland, and I think I'm a pretty smart guy. I couldn't figure out how to make this Ninja coffee maker work. And so as a joke, they knew what I was, I recommend this for fireplace, for grills, fire pits, anything that's really challenging from a safety perspective. But they actually made one for me for the Ninja coffee maker. And I was like, hey, that's helpful. That works.
Yeah.
So fun stuff. I'm gonna take a little dive into something this was a little bit more of a tragic incident. And I think a lot of people look at this incident and say this is a unique tragedy. I'm gonna argue it's not. But this actually happened in my home state of Maine. We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of it. And this was a really tough one because as you can see there, that 6-year-old girl that's right there, the girl in the that's leaning over there in the gray shirt, she was killed by a badminton racket. And you may think, well, how did that happen? Well, her brother, the smiling boy there in the red, actually was the one who did it. He didn't mean to do it, but basically what happened is I mean, you've seen this 1,000 times. These are closets you typically see in an Airbnb. There's a bunch of games. We all know that there's a missing monopoly piece in there, and there might only be 51 cards, not 52. And a lot of hosts and operators don't take time to organize that, and it just is what it is. And if the renters aren't happy, they can go buy a new one. Well, we had a family that had stayed in this property the summer before that bought this badminton set, broke the racket, and because the net, the birdies, the poles, and the other racket were still good, rather than throwing it away, they just shoved it in this closet. And along came, this family, and they had no idea that the racket was broken because of the way the piece was on. This isn't the exact racket, but I'm just showing this as an example. And very first throw, the boy went out there. You could try this 1,000 times and not do what he did, but on his very first swing, unfortunately, the racket spear broke and it went in and it hit his sister in the head and killed her. It was like a spear. And so, yeah, that's the freak nature of it. But think
Hmm.
about this. There are so many operators out there that have all this stuff, and people just assume it. They just assume it. You go into a Hilton or you go into a Marriott or you go to a resort or you're on a cruise ship. If there's something presented for guests to use, it's been checked most of the time. And we've got to assume that, if you're leaving out beach chairs. We've seen where people have been impaled by umbrellas because they don't secure in the base anymore, and the wind came, lifted it like Mary Poppins, and drop it down. It only takes a couple of inches for an elderly person to dislocate a hip in a rusted out, broken beach chair, wagons, all these things. We've got to check them in baby gear as well. I was just
Yes.
in St. Simons Island, Georgia, and I go into a closet and I said, "Hey, that pack and play that you leave out for the guests, when's the last time you inspected it?" And everybody looked at each other and I pulled it out. It was broken. Not only was it broken, it was recalled. And it was not supposed to
Hmm.
be there. They had no idea. So we got to check this stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've seen a lot of people say that one of the best ways to make sure you're staying up on checking on your Airbnbs and their inventory is to stay in your property. And that I think is a great idea. Stay in your own property so you have the time to go through and make sure things are working the way they should, that they're stored where they should be. Give you time to organize that game closet.
Absolutely. And if you're not, here's my thought, for example, on this pack and play, and I have hosts that say, but I have a couple guests a year that use it. All right, so you have two, maybe three guests a year that need a pack and play. They're not going to book with you unless you give them a pack and play. I would rather send them, they cost $80 on Amazon. I'd rather send them an $80 gift card, let them buy it, ship it to the property, and then they own it. And if they leave it behind, donate it and take it as a tax write-off than to just leave it in the closet, unless after each booking, you're going to open it up and inspect it every time, which none of us are going to have time to do. So that's just my thoughts on it. Well, then remember I was talking about Brian Chesky at the beginning. He was maybe he wasn't quite in diapers. He might have been toddling around. He's getting starting to get up there. But big news came out last year. There was two things that happened, and it was very frustrating. I'm not showing the first one. The first one was, hey, if you have an Airbnb, you are no longer allowed to have cameras on the inside of your property. And that was a challenge for some people. It reassured people who were staying in Airbnbs, though, that if I'm going to go stay in one, I don't want to have some camera out there. And I get really frustrated. I see some of these. There's a smoke alarm that people have hidden cameras in. They've been in bathrooms. There's a lot of things that have happened with the cameras. And there's still controversy. I see some at swimming pools. You're allowed to have them outside of the swimming pool. And I see in Facebook groups all the time where people are covering them. I've also seen where a camera just protected a host from a pool drowning. So I go both ways. Bottom line, he said you can't do that anymore, but yet people are dying from carbon monoxide over and over in Airbnbs, and Airbnb said, yeah, we can't mandate that. It's like, wait a minute. No one's died of embarrassment from being seen on a camera, and you can say no more cameras, but people are dying from carbon monoxide and they couldn't come out and say you have to have carbon monoxide alarms. And they said it's because they can't validate it. Well, that's what I do. That's what I work for Breezeway. Our safety inspections validate these every day and showcase that we can validate that operators have carbon monoxide alarms. So that was a frustrating thing for me. In fact, your state, Ashley, Colorado, is where the carbon monoxide alarm came from for short-term rentals when a family died up in Aspen in 2008. So gotta have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then this incident happened. Now this is a frustrating one. This is in Wisconsin. Nice looking home. Look at it. This is what my eyes immediately see is electricals and conduits there on the right side of the house. And I see that plastic thing there. That's a cover for an egress window. So that immediately tells me that they're letting people sleep in the basement. But as I look at this, this is a relatively nice home, gambrel roof, probably built mid 1990s, early 80s. The logs are in good condition. But this is their listing photo. This is another listing photo, and I was like, wow, they rushed to get this property online because they didn't even make their beds. You've seen that before where people
Oh
are
yeah.
like, you look at some of these listing photos and you're just like, hey guys, if you're already renting it, why don't you go back and take some more and show that you actually did make the beds? But saw this, okay. Basement bedroom, they hadn't even finished unpacking all these lanterns and different things, but there's that egress window I was talking about and another bedroom. But guess what? I haven't seen yet, and I know you haven't either. I haven't seen a smoke alarm. And I look for those. I just rented a property in Austin, Texas, because I'm going to be there this weekend. I had to search for about 10 properties before I finally saw a smoke alarm in one, and it made me feel comfortable, and I'm going to check it when I get there. So I'm looking through it. Oh, okay. There it is. There's the smoke alarm. You see it right there. And
Yep.
okay, that's a problem though. And the problem is that's a commercial alarm. What that means is when they bought this house or when they put this in, they have to have an account. It has to be set up and monitored. So if that alarm goes off, it's gonna, go to this keypad. Who's gonna reset it? You've got to call the alarm company. Is the alarm company gonna call the fire department if they don't use? So that's that type of alarm. It's like what you see in a school or hospital. Well, that did turn out to be a problem. And unfortunately, look how many people perished in this house. That's a lot of people to die in one property.
Wow.
And they immediately identified no smoke alarms went off. And come to find out, in their rush to get this listing up, nobody set up an account for that smoke alarm. And it didn't have any permits as a result of that. That particular locality had that, but six people dying because there were no working smoke alarms. It's just a no-brainer. It's so frustrating to see that. I go back to this bedroom. This is a room where some of the kids died. Look at the process. You've got to go through this and think about this. Look at the process they would have had to have gone through to escape. That's their escape window there. See those blinds? Have you ever tried opening those type of wooden blinds before?
Yeah, they're not easy.
They're not, they're heavy. Like I'm a pretty strong guy. You can't really pull them with one hand. You usually have to use two. So here's a kid's room. This isn't the right blinds to be using in a room like this if the kids were expected to open. And then look at the next process. They'd have to reach up and undo that type of a lock on the window that's pretty high up for a kid. And then they've got to crank out the window. And this is after they have no working smoke alarms. So they didn't have much time. And unfortunately, they did find one of the kids right by that window, and it was clear he had had trouble trying to open the blinds in there. So, really scary situation. We've got to go into every sleeping area, every bedroom of every property, and we've got to have go through what happens when there's a fire. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Started getting into the summer, and I'm like, I hope that Wisconsin Dells fire is the worst that we've seen. And then this property came up. This one's changed a lot of what's happening down in Destin, Florida right now. Beautiful home, nice rental. You look at this. Let's see, Ashley, I'm gonna quiz you here. What do you see here that might
I
catch your eye?
see a very old smoke detector.
Yeah, they don't make
Or
them
is
in
that a
off-white.
candlelight? Yeah. It's it's
That
it's it's like an OG one.
it almost looks like chocolate. Like you could melt it and roast it on your marshmallows. But I mean, they don't make smoke alarms in off-white. They're only made in pure white. There's never in the history of smoke alarms been a manufacturer, believe it or not, they were invented back in the 1800s. Never has there been a smoke alarm that's off-white. So they're pure white. So I see that right away and I'm like, here's an operator who's more focused on making sure the pillows are placed well and they've got artwork on the wall than what I think is the single most important item. But there's one other thing that's wrong here. Do you see it?
Uh the
So
the armoire is blocking that window.
Yeah, so how do you get out in a fire? This isn't a sprinkled. I don't see any sprinkler heads. And so egress is extremely important. All 50 states, everyone who's on here, just so you know, you're supposed to have, if you don't have a fire sprinkler system in the bedrooms, you have to have two exits. One's typically the door that leads out into the hallway. The other has to be directly to the outside and it can't be blocked. And here it was blocked. And so what happened when this caught on fire, this is crazy. Because the smoke alarms didn't work, they were too old, none of them went off. This family woke up at the last minute and barely got out. Here's what's crazy is there was a rental car that was parked next door that alerted through OnStar that it was on fire. That's how hot this fire
Wow.
was, that OnStar notified and said, we've got a car fire. So the first truck responding, first fire truck, was just one truck. They sent three guys because they thought it was just a car fire, and usually one truck can handle that. And it spread into three different vacation rentals. The family did survive, but they all barely made it out. And all they could talk about on the news for weeks was there was no smoke. That the girl on the far left with the Florida shirt, all she kept saying is, we never heard a smoke alarm. There were no smoke alarms. These are dangerous. We're never going to stay in these again. It just keeps pounding the media. And now Destin is looking at putting severe restrictions in. So this is bad when this doesn't happen. $150 worth of smoke alarms would have made sure none of this happened. If there'd been a fire, they would have knocked it down. People would have got out, and people would have said, "Thank gosh there were smoke alarms," and that type of thing worked.
Yeah.
This is kind of a crazy one. I throw this in because I see these all the time. Believe it or not, we lose 10 to 15 people a year from trees falling on Airbnbs. This happened in August. And it's because people don't look up. You got to look up. If you've got trees on your property, hazards, different things that could come down. In fact, the very first time that people started talking about people dying in Airbnbs was a guy who wrote about his dad in 2015 in the New York Times. His dad died at a vacation rental when he was sitting in a swing, and the entire tree branch came down, unfortunately, and killed him.
Wow.
So we got to look up. Got a little further into the summer, still in August, and then this happened. And this brings an awareness that a lot of people don't think about. U.S. Consumer Product Safety Council came out and said, hey, there's a million of these Samsung stoves that are catching on fire. We're recalling them. It's because of the front mounted knobs. People aren't familiar with it. We did some research here at Breezeway. There were thousands of these in vacation rentals. In fact, I still see some of them in there where they didn't do it. But it highlights how many recalls we have. If you go on the US, you just Google this, US Consumer Product Safety Recall. I did a look just in this month of April. I count 13 items that are popular in Airbnbs that have been recalled. And you got to check that stuff. You go on there,
Yeah.
right? You go there every
Yeah.
week. You're there.
Yeah. I go on there and I check, but I also have a recall notice for my personal residence, and they have every single item all for this residence. And they go through and they email me every time there's a change in that list of things that have been recalled so that I can stay on top of it because it's hard to always
Is
be checking things. If you don't have a process to it, that's something, you got to add it to your checklist. Or if you're somebody that's using a VA to help you, that seems like the perfect opportunity to have a VA scrubbing that list.
Absolutely. And you can jump. Sometimes you can just feed it. If you've, for insurance purposes, you should have a list of all the items that are in your property. You can just throw that in chatbot GBT and say, are any of these items recalled? So there's a lot of easy ways to help you do that nowadays. But this is what the website looks like. You'll see all these things that are in there. It's super easy to search. You can search by products, dates. It's free. Do it. You need to do it. Then this happened, and this was crazy because this was a friend of mine. They called me up and said, "Dude, I'm in an Airbnb right now, and I know you deal with this safety stuff. The exhaust fan's on fire in the bathroom." I'm like, "Yeah, there's a bunch of those." And in fact, this was started popping up everywhere. What happens, Ashley, is when you and I go stay in an Airbnb, we're bringing our luggage with us. Do you bring luggage into your own home very often?
Not often at all.
Not often at all. Most people don't. We're bringing these people when they're coming and staying in our properties, they're bringing lots of lint. They're bringing lots of different things. They're washing towels more than you do at home. At my house, I wash my towel maybe once every week or so. But these guys are getting towels every day, dryer lint. There's much more dust and debris because the general public's coming in. And so we're seeing this a spike nationwide, and a lot of them have been particularly noticeable that they're appearing in Airbnb. So you got to get in there. You got to make sure you're doing maintenance and cleaning. You got to do things above and beyond what you would normally do in your own home. You might do this every 3 or 4 years in your own home, but if you're having Airbnb, you got to have that checklist. Hey, once a year, we got to get in there, make sure the cleaner's using the dust attachment. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. Then this happened. Now, this happened 2 years ago, where these two young ladies were killed. Again, situation, no smoke alarms. This was pretty big, though, because this took 2 years in the court system. They'd rented this house through VRBO. You can see there were 58 building code violations. We had a case of handy homeowner, somebody who went to Home Depot and decided to follow a YouTube video and build a grill. We see that all the time now. He didn't do it properly, and the guests thought it was extinguished. It wasn't. They woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of breaking glass, thought there was an intruder. It turned out that it was a fire, and the couple got out. Their son jumped out a window, broke a leg, but unfortunately, their two daughters didn't. And this guy was a retired federal judge, so he made it his dying wish. He was terminal with cancer. He just passed away recently to make sure this never happened again. And so I often tell people this is the scariest photo I ever show. It wasn't the thing with the racket and the birdie there. This is it. Those are two Airbnb hosts being told that two people have just died in their property. And I hope nobody ever experiences that. And what took this further and kind of put a resolution on it is it in November, so 6 months ago, they became the very first two Airbnb hosts in our industry to be charged with negligent homicide for people dying in their property because smoke alarms weren't working. Precedent has been set. And so that's a pretty scary thing to think. And that really makes sure that you've got to put that much more emphasis every single turnover. I'm sure you've burned popcorn before.
Oh yeah.
What do you do when you burn popcorn and the smoke alarm's going off?
Start flapping the towel to
Uh,
make it turn off.
if you don't know much more about it, you're in real estate, you get it. But a lot of people they pull that battery out and
hmm
then it's not there. You got to check it. You got to check it all the time. That was followed by this, which was yet another fire. And this was really frustrating. In New York, couple put their toddler and baby to bed. They went out and sat on the porch 10 o'clock at night. They smelled smoke, heard breaking glass again, turned around, and the entire property was on fire. She went upstairs to save the baby. He went in and he tried to call 911. He got his son out, but mom and the baby unfortunately did perish. And boom, here we go. For the second time in 3 months, we now have Airbnb owners charged with manslaughter in connection with fire because there are no working smoke alarms in their property. Precedent is set. If you need any more reason right now that you should be checking your smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms between each turnover, I see operators out there now that are like giving an incentive to their cleaner. Like if the cleaner says, "Hey, I
I
checked
was
the
just
smoke
gonna
alarms
ask.
are working," yeah, I'm going to give you $10 if you find that isn't. And that's fantastic. We need to get them involved if you're operating your property remotely, and make sure they're checking that.
That's great. I want to reiterate that for anybody that maybe didn't quite pick up. He's not just saying pay your cleaners an extra fee to check the smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. He's saying incentivize them to find one that's not working and pay them to find that. That instead they're going to check and then they'll be sending you proof. I think that's a great idea to make sure they're actually doing it.
Yeah, I was in a property recently where the host has this little sign. They picked it up from a top hotel brand. I can't remember if it was um, Marriott or somebody, but they put these stickers under the beds that say, "Yeah, we clean under here too," and incentivize their cleaners. And I'm like looking up, and the smoke alarm's like so covered in dust and brown. I'm like, why? I don't think anybody's gonna die from what's under the bed. Why don't you switch that mindset? You just need somebody like me. This is what I do. I come along. I've been in this industry now over 25 years. I'm here to tell you, do it. You got to do it. If you haven't had anybody tell you yet, I'm the guy. Do it. Check it.
Yeah, it's like that show, Scared Straight.
Yeah. And now this is what happens. That happened last fall. Now look at this. This is in the news this week. Every single time these incidents happen in a market, all of a sudden regulations come in, people want to ban them. As you can see here now, because of these two deaths, they're putting a bill forth in the state of Massachusetts to require safety standards for short-term rentals. And they're coming in more strict than what I think they need to. If people would just do this stuff, it's not going to affect our industry. Yes, part of it's the Wild West, but you've got to do this stuff because if you don't, they're going to put you out of business and make it so you can't. And
Yeah.
we've seen
Well,
that happen.
that's the other thing. If they are coming in and they might make more strict rules, it makes sense to be ahead of it. Just get
Yeah.
ahead of it now. Those rules are probably, once the precedence is set, those rules are probably coming.
Absolutely. And I had an operator in Scottsdale, Arizona 2 years ago. They put some regs in place, and all these operators there, co-hosts and managers, were telling their owners to come in and fight these regulations. The guy who did my safety program, who was a co-host, he walked into the meeting, and at the end, he goes, I don't know what the big deal is here. All these safety regulations you want to put in place, we're already doing them. I do it for all my operators. He walked out of that meeting. He picked up 7 new co-hosting jobs because all these owners are like, well, the guy I work with told me to come to this meeting to protest them, and you said you're already doing this. I'm with the wrong people. I need to be with you. So it was a huge owner acquisition opportunity for him. So yeah, get ahead of it. It's going to happen. And that's where I lead into the mentality we need to have in this industry is not if. I hear it all the time. Boy, if we ever had a dog come here, it would make a mess. We don't want that. Boy, I hope, if we had kids here, I don't know how they'd be able to deal with the fact that, we've got this ladder and railings and it's not safe. There's a cliff. I hear all these ifs. And yet, everybody I talk to who's had an incident will tell you they wish they had had the mentality of when. You have to use when because it's not a matter of if. At some point in time, you're going to have a fire at your property, and you have to accept that. Whether it's lightning, a cigarette, something faulty, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week, but you will have a fire. And if you haven't approached it from the fact of, gosh, when I have 2 kids sleeping in this room, this has the bunk beds in it, this is the room kids are most likely going to be in. What are they going to do to get out of here? Because the parents are 2 floors down in the primary bedroom and they can't get up to them. How are these kids going to get out? When? Have that mentality. And we need to understand that guests are more tuned in this than ever. Customers, and I'll show you an example here in a minute. People are looking for safety. They care about safety. They're seeing all these horrific things in the news. Lester Holt isn't on the NBC Nightly News going, oh, and here's if another family had a great stay at a vacation rental. They went home safe. Everyone was happy. No, monthly, there are stories. There was a deck collapse in Malibu. 17 people at an Airbnb were injured. 3 people just died at an Airbnb in Mexico City because of carbon monoxide. 2 girls died. All they're hearing is this negative stuff, and they're not hearing it about hotels. Hotels only had 7 deaths last year that we know of. So there's a lot of interest now, and people are concerned. And in fact, this highlights it. Ashleigh, these aren't even people that we're marketing to. People who never go on Airbnb, never go on VRBO, never go to booking.com that aren't would never stay in a rental. When I go on vacation, we go on a cruise. When I go on vacation, we stay at a resort. We would never stay in one of those properties. 62% said because of safety concerns. Imagine how many more people would come use our product if we could convince them that it's safe.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge untapped market of people that it's such an easy fix. Hotels can do it. Hotels are doing it. So we got to rise to that standard too.
Hotels, the hotel industry, the lobby is going to spend millions of dollars saying that short-term rentals are not safe. And Hilton has been the leader in it. You've probably seen those ads where the girl shows up at a really scary house and she's like, ah, and then they say Hilton for the stay and they show them checking in and everything's fine at the hotel. They are using safety against us. We've got to pay attention. And we have to be aware that more injuries happen in the home than anywhere else. Forget it being a short-term rental. 53% of all injuries that an American human being has is in the home. If you're in France, it's 80%. I don't know what they're doing over in France. But no matter where you go around the globe, Australia, 57, New Zealand, 62, wherever you go, the most likely place that a human being is going to be injured is in a home, and that's our product. And we don't do enough to recognize that the people are coming in all ages, all sizes. It's the general public. It's not people you want. It's not your best friends that are cool. This is people who never were intended to come into a home unsupervised. And that's why we've got to make sure that our properties are safer. So, how do you do this? I got hope for you. First, we need to recognize that furniture tip overs are huge. How do you know that? I'm going to give you guys access to my safety course here in a minute. We need to acknowledge this. This is crazy. 76% of all Americans will reach a level of intoxication at least once on vacation. These are people who don't get drunk in their own home. They're going to come stay in your properties, and that changes the whole field. We already have a product that's a challenge, and now we have people that are unsupervised drinking alcohol in it. So we've got to go above and beyond to make sure that it's safe. I don't like distributing wine and beer and giving it out for free at your Airbnb. I don't like to be the one. They're going to do it, but don't start them out on it. Let's remember smoke alarms are not good after 10 years. They don't make them for longer than that. Number one cause of death at a vacation rental is a pool drowning. So step one is get safety certified. I invite anybody who would like to take our Breezeway safety course. It is the only safety course of its kind in the entire world. There's no other course. We have it in Spanish, English. We have Central American versions. It takes 4 to 6 hours online, and you can get safety certified. Happy to make sure you do that and break it down. Step one is first make sure nobody's going to die on your property. And then step two, once you've got that settled, make sure nobody's going to get injured. Slips, trips, and falls are the number one cause of injury in an Airbnb. I'm sure you've seen some of those where you go down the stairs and it's like, there's no handrail.
No handrail, no carpet to make them less slippery. That Trex deck material, that is slippery.
Yeah, it is. Hot tubs. People falling in hot tubs all the time. It's 60 bucks. I just ordered another one. 60 bucks for a handrail on a hot tub that spins. We got to make sure they can get in and out of hot tubs. Elderly people. I'm 6'5". That's a long way up, and then I step down and up over. It's a minefield. So, different things that we can do. And then you want to document it. You need to protect yourself. Um, I'm showing you examples with how Breezeway works, but just, if you don't even use that, just use your cell phone, have your cleaner, have the geotag on, document it. I just saw an operator get out of a slip and fall case. Guest came forth and said, 3 months ago, I was injured at your Airbnb. I slipped and fell because the outside lights weren't on. And thank God the operator's cleaner documented that she checked the lights and turned them on and off and had documentation of it. They sent that into the insurance company and they denied the claim from the guest. Like, we have proof that this
Wow.
operator checks the lights. So anything you can do to make sure you're checking all these different things. I had mentioned earlier about the bathroom fans. Same thing with the smoke alarms. If you read the instruction for any smoke alarm sold in the U.S., it says you're supposed to vacuum them once a month. Once a month. That keeps the dust down.
I'd like to know
And
how many people even do it once a year.
most people didn't even know they have to do that. If you're an operator in this industry, and I'm going to pick on you, Ashley, because I don't think you have either, and it's okay. I hadn't until about 10 years ago either. But have you ever read the instruction manual for your smoke alarm?
Beyond when I was setting it up, making sure that it was the batteries were in correctly and I knew how to push the button to test it, I never looked at them again.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody in this industry needs to read them once. These are things people are giving you the ultimate trust. Um, just sit down for 5 minutes. That whole thing folds out like this big, and it's all in English. It's not like it's German, Portuguese, Spanish. It's in English. There's a lot of information there, and you need to understand because it's not, you don't put it up because it looks cool in the center of the room, or I want to get it off to the side. You got to think about airflow, vents from air conditioning, blowers, forced hot air, too close to a bathroom, too close to a corner. There's all kinds of stuff. And a lot of people are always excited about the Nest Protect. I see that in a lot of Airbnbs. Hey, guess what? They just discontinued those 2 weeks ago because they're junk. They scored 51 on Consumer Reports. They're not making Nest anymore because it wasn't good. And there's millions of them out there in Airbnbs. Get rid of those things and replace them with some better smoke alarms. So anybody who wants to take a look at an inspection report of what I recommend, you can scan this QR code, and that's going to take you to this report right here. This is what has all my safety checklist items in it. I think every year, every property should have this done, and you can do this yourself. So really easy to do that. And then guess what? Market it. Market that you're doing this. Everyone in here can do this. This is mind blowing. This might be the most golden ticket out of this whole time that you've spent with me today, is that you can do this and get more bookings. This woman, when you Google search safe Airbnb, her property comes up organically. So you'll see a bunch of paid sponsor links, but underneath that, organically, she's #1 in the world. And her bookings are through the roof. She can barely keep up with it. She calls me from time to time going, Justin, keep spreading the word. I don't care if other people are doing this. I get so many bookings from families all the time that want to book my property because of my commitment to safety. She makes more money. She charges more money. She gets better reviews. She gets better guests. She's a partier isn't going to rent this house. She's getting families that care and are keeping her house. She noticed that her house is cleaner, it's better maintained, she doesn't get as many complaints. This is who you want staying in your property, and you can market that and get more guests this way. It's huge. And if you're a bigger operator, you're a co-host, show that you have a commitment to safety on your website. A lot of the big companies do that now. It's easy to do it. So I'm happy to jump into questions. And anybody has any questions, I'm going to put the link to my safety course in there and share that. So if anybody wants to take it, it takes like 4 to 6 hours online. You get a discount on your insurance if you do it. So really cool thing to do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Justin. Our Q&A doesn't have any questions in it yet. We had one in the chat, which hopefully, Chad, we answered that for you a little bit. He asked if there's a service that we can hire to inspect STRs and their inventory.
I am unaware of any service that does it. Some have tried. And so that's why we developed this safety course so that people can just do it on their own. You should have this knowledge. I mean, if you work in a restaurant, you got to have safety training. If you work at an auto dealership and you're putting tires and lug nuts on, you got to have safety training. So to take 4 to 6 hours and do this, you should know how to do this yourself.
Absolutely. And I do think if Chad mentioned he is a hopeful STR owner looking in Maine right now. So, Chad, I would say definitely when you do find a property you're interested in purchasing, have a conversation with your inspector before they go in and say, hey, by the way, once this is up and operating, I have a really high interest in protecting the safety of my guests. Be sure to highlight those for me. It might not have anything to do with your purchase process, but you can reference that inspection in the future when you are running through your safety checks to help guide you. Let's see. And then Chad also asked if there are trainings or tools to ensure they knew what to look for. And luckily, Justin does have that training. He just dropped the link.
I'm
And
gonna do, I'm gonna do something crazy here, Ashley. Just because I'm feeling generous today for the people. This is for people who are live, who showed up 11 o'clock Eastern time to be here. Give me about 20 minutes to make this work, but I just put a promo code on. It's a $350 course. Anybody who's here, who's live, I'm gonna make this work through the end of today. Today's April 23rd, so till midnight tonight, you can access the course for free.
wow.
Yeah.
Hop on that, guys. That's huge. $350 in savings on the course. And I mean, the insurmountable savings for peace of mind and for your future guest safety. This is huge. We have a couple more questions really quick. Let's see. Checklists. Do you have any documents or downloads in your course or available for checklists?
Yeah. And I'm texting our marketing team right now to say I just did something stupid. Hang on. It's only through the end of today. I just gave away hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars worth of access safety course. But wait, if you go into the safety course, my checklists are in there. They're included at the end. You can see all that, blogs, pools. I have a whole thing on just pool safety, videos on how smoke alarms work, all kinds of stuff. And then that QR code that I gave you before, you'll have access to what an inspection report looks like that you should do in your own properties. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Let's see. So that answered that one. We've got the link to the course. Rachel mentioned that she had a carbon monoxide poisoning incident during the time that they had a functioning detector in the home.
Yeah.
And that is really tricky. I think that there's a couple points about placement of those. and location, because they're not all states regulate them as highly as Colorado does.
Yeah, and they're like any other consumer product. I actually did. I have a. You can find it in my Instagram feed. I have a reel where I'm at Home Depot and I'm standing there and I'm interviewing people that show up and I'm saying, "You're looking for smoke alarms, right?" And I'm just curious, how are you looking? And I was there for 2.5 hours. There wasn't a single person who didn't show up that was looking based on price. And then I would show them the reviews from Consumer Reports. There wasn't a single carbon monoxide alarm for sale at either Lowe's or Home Depot that scored above 55 out of 100. And people were blunt. They had no idea. They're spending $50. I'm
Wow.
like, if you go to True Value or if you find this one online at Amazon, it scored 93. So I'm suspicious. Unfortunately, Rachel might have had a carbon monoxide alarm that just was not a good one. And it met the bare minimum standards to be sold, which puts them in that 50 score range. That's why Nest is discontinued. They were
Yeah,
junk off all the time.
interesting. Crazy. All right, we got a couple minutes. We have somebody with their hand up. I'm hopeful, David, that you can hop off mute, or if not, you can put it in the chat.
Let's see what David's going to do. David, you got it's all you, man. Hit the hit the button that takes you off mute, and we will listen.
Or let us know if it was an accident. The link, Brian, the link is in the chat for the course, and the code is as well, but it was April 23.
Yep.
And then Justin posted, oh, you know what? Actually, Justin, can you resend the link one more time and then change it from hosts and panelists to everyone?
Oh,
There we go. That might be,
I
yeah,
still
we'll
have
get
a
that.
chance to. I still have a chance to revoke. There you go.
Thanks,
Back. You
Brian.
did
Thanks for
what?
letting us know and pointing that out.
I already got a message back going. You did what?
That's the best. When you make marketing teams upset, you know you're doing something right.
Wow, this is a good group here. Anybody who wants to stick around on a Wednesday morning and talk about safety, yeah. Hopefully,
Yeah, it's we appreciate
hopefully
it,
this
guys.
was
I know that
relevant.
yeah, it's not the most fun appealing topic. You know, sometimes we're talking about increasing your revenue and maximizing your occupancy in the off seasons and all the ways to make more money. And you don't think of safety as a way to make more money, but as we learned today, it absolutely is a tool for that. And it's a tool for your own protection, your guest protection. I mean, I just can't even imagine being the host that has to hear that horrific news. It's none of our goals. And so we really appreciate, Justin, everything you're doing to speak up and advocate for increased safety standards in this industry. And I think this is definitely a huge shift that we'll continue to see progress. And you, everybody that took their time to be on this call today, you have a chance to be ahead of the curve. So I hope that you took something away and that you'll find, oh, David was able to put it in the chat real quick. Recommendation for escape ladder for a treehouse.
Like for a kid's treehouse or like your property is a treehouse. I'm if it's for a kid's treehouse, get rid of that right away. So, but if it's your property is a treehouse. Actually, really cool. There was Werner makes escape ladders. They're the portable kind that you can attach and throw out the. Okay, property rented good. They're the kind that you can throw out the window. I see hosts put them in a bag and they either put them up in a closet or under the bed. If you're going to do that, make sure you have a sign on the back of the sleeping area door or that's highly visible that says escape ladder underneath. By code, residential code, anytime you're more than 20 feet above ground, you need to have that escape ladder so that they can get out. They're $50, the Werner ones. But there's this really cool thing that these firefighters just did. They were on Shark Tank. And it's called Rescue Ready. It's like rescue-ready.com. And they have these cool ones that you screw in underneath the window trim, and then you can
Ooh,
get a matching trim plate for your window. So you can just put a label on it that says escape ladder. Now the guests just have to take the cover off, and it's attached already. They just have to toss it out. I'll see if I can find it wicked quick and put the link to it in here.
that's a great idea because it is difficult. I know I saw some posts in a Facebook group there asking you about storing those ladders. And that is difficult. You know, how easy is it for a guest to have thrown a blanket over it and forgotten it's there? Trying the code and it doesn't apply. Yeah, his marketing team has to get it to work. Yeah,
I gotta
just a
get
little
off.
too
I'm the one who's gonna put it in. I gotta jump off here. So give me like 20 minutes
20
to do it.
minutes. Yeah.
I'll have it ready.
So
Here's
starting
a
at
to that that
be
rescue
rescue
ladder.
ready. Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you everybody for attending, and then we will see you at next week's Savvy session.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here. And again, you can find me at Short Term Rental Safety on Instagram. I respond to messages. I have people all the time who say, "Hey, Justin, what's this? Look at that." Any of these questions. So happy to reach out anytime. And Ashley, thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right, everybody. Have a great day.